When the red live light blinked on, the studio somehow became smaller and bigger at the same time. Smaller because the cameras, the desk, the teleprompters, and the four people behind them were compressed into a single box of attention. Bigger because that single box contained an entire city's days worth of worry, curiosity, and rumor. For 12 years, Kelly Hernandez had learned to make the studio feel steady. Her voice, precisely warm, practiced to land like a hand on a shoulder, had become something people trusted to tell them how the day would shape up. She had a habit, on the days when the world felt extra unstable, of smoothing one hand over the laminated notes in front of her, as if her fingers could iron out the wrinkles in the day's headlines. Mark Davenport, by contrast, had spent the last 6 years running toward things. Field reporting suited him, wind in his coat, the smell of smoke, the sense of being in the middle of a story's bones. He was more comfortable off the sound stage, where his empathy could sit beside him in an old jacket and get its hands dirty. On screen, Mark was practiced at translating chaos into sentences. Off-screen, he collected small, stubborn acts of kindness the way other people collected photographs. That Tuesday morning began like a long string of little miscommunications. A gas main blew in the south side, a community organizer scheduled a press conference about affordable housing, and schools delayed start times because a snow remnant storm had iced the highways. These were routine threads of the city's life. The newsroom sorted, prioritized, and fed them into the day's broadcast in the neat, hungry pulse of a living machine. By 10:30, the newsroom's beat whiteboard had been reconfigured 3 times. The executive producer, Maya, had the kind of energy that made the room move. She barked instructions into her headset, eyes flicking like a tennis player's, and then paused when the wire pinged. Something huge was happening downtown. There were images rolling in, indistinct at first, from citizens, building cameras, a few scrambled cell phone videos. A low rumble ran through the room that had nothing to do with the weather. It was the premonition of a story that would accelerate, split, and demand every muscle the station had. Kelly read the flash on the teleprompter, never taking her eyes off the camera while the producers rearranged the order of the show. Breaking news, she said into her earpiece, and she could hear Maya's voice too. Roll the lower third, get Mark live, don't cut the feed. The city can change in moments. 100,000 decisions hinge on a single breath. They had to be ready. Mark's van labored through downtown traffic, lights spinning, the city outside a blur of horns and windshield wipers. He had almost no time to think about anything he wouldn't be able to explain. When the scene opened, a municipal building ablaze, smoke boiling like a living thing, the camera crew moved with practiced choreography. The mayor's press aides clustered in the periphery. Policemen tried to corral the crowd. A stranger offered Mark a sweatshirt because the wind was cold and the smoke colder. "You look like you need it," the woman said. Mark accepted it and tucked it over his shoulder, a small human transaction he hadn't planned for but recognized as necessary. The official line was sparse. An explosion? Boiler malfunction? Unknown cause at this time, the fire chief said into a mic, face so taut the sun made it sharper. Emergency services scrambled. But in the raw, the human stories were already there. A man on his knees behind the police tape with his hands on his head, a teenager sobbing into a friend's shoulder, a woman clutching a small framed photograph, its glass cracked by the heat. Mark's camera lingered on these faces because faces needed to be seen, because amid any news, the human ledger matters most. Back in the studio, Kelly felt the room tilt around her. Producers fed her details. Number of injured, streets shut down, the mayor en route. Mark's live, Maya told her. Get him when he gets in frame. Kelly adjusted the smile cameras expected of her. She could be stern, light, humorous, whatever the moment required. When the director counted down, she slid to her role like a glove. The studio clock clicked over as if marking the city's new coordinate. Good morning, Kelly began. We're interrupting our regular programming. Breaking news in downtown, a major explosion has rocked the municipal building on. She named the intersection by road, because in these moments naming makes things real. The lower third crawled across the screen. Breaking, explosion downtown, live coverage. The live feed switched to Mark, and the city filled the screen with smoke, a plume behind him like a second angry moon. He spoke clearly, giving the facts that were known. Injuries, streets closed, emergency crews on the scene. Then he turned to the camera and without drama, described a detail the official releases hadn't yet included. People searching, phones out, a poster of someone missing someone's face. His tone had changed, softened, because he had been talking to a mother digging through a satchel for photographs. And then it happened. The woman with the sweatshirt, the woman who'd given Mark her warm jacket earlier, huddled into frame. Her face was a pinched question. "Have you seen my son?" she asked, voice rough as paper. "He works in the building. His name is Jonah Reyes." They cut to the fire chief. "We're accounting for employees," he said. "We can't confirm individual reports yet." The camera drifted back to Mark, who had a new job inside an old job, to add humanity where headlines would otherwise flatten everything out. He asked the woman for more details, her voice breaking as she named the floors, the color of Jonah's jacket, the last text that hadn't been returned. He promised, irresponsibly, no doubt, that he'd keep looking, that he would not move until someone told him otherwise. It was then, 30 minutes into the coverage, that the channel's news director received the call every newsroom fears. On a different radio frequency, a line used by the city's emergency services, a voice said the body counts number. The numbers were preliminary, shockingly specific. It was only then that the news director had to decide, do they report this? Do they wait for official confirmation? The temptation for immediacy was strong. The law of ethical journalism is heavier. Verify. Kelly felt the weight like an ant's hand. "We have unconfirmed reports," she said carefully, the live light making her words small and bright. "We're waiting on official confirmation." They cut to a commercial, a measured, brief pause that every newsroom carved into the moment to breathe, to let the facts catch up with the feeling. When the anchors returned, the mood had stiffened. The official confirmation came through. Lives lost, names to be released when families had been notified. The newsroom moved as if on a ship, steady hands, sharp voices. Kelly's practiced warmth had to become a new instrument, compassionate without being intrusive, robust without being robotic. She read the statement from the mayor and then moved to what mattered, the people. "We will hear from those affected," she said. "We'll stay with this through the day." The day did not go gentle. The press conferences multiplied. Cameras swung between the scene and the hospital, where relatives paced like slow clocks. Mark found himself caught in a loop of telling what was there and listening to what could not be bottled. The way a sister repeated the last phone call, the way a friend wouldn't let go of a palm. On television, they call it standby, waiting for the new piece of the puzzle. Off camera, it was people waiting for doors to open and tell them what the city had already decided. 2 days later, a lighter story interrupted the steady stream of grief, one that had nothing to do with the explosion, but would eventually thread back to it in the strangest way. It was Kelly's birthday. She had always hated birthdays on public schedules. They felt staged, obligatory. Still, her colleagues had baked a small cake, and the newsroom had sung in an embarrassingly off-key chorus during a midday meeting. Kelly laughed, shy and real, and then returned to the seriousness, the explosion cleanup, the memorial. As the day wound down, she scribbled a note to herself and slid it into the top drawer of her desk. Make a call. Check on Mark. The drawer had a habit of holding things that otherwise vanished. Old receipts, a few post-its, a ticket stub from a concert. Kelly's note tacked itself next to a faded photograph, a snapshot of her and a childhood friend, sunburned and triumphant at a summer fair. For all her on-camera poise, Kelly was a skeptical romantic, The newsroom was a family that had never been planned. She liked the idea of checking in with the people who had run into the storm with her. Mark was one of them. She typed his cell number and then deleted it twice. There was the professional boundary. Colleagues were not confidants, strictly speaking, but the city had a way of making boundaries porous. She let it go. She sent him a text. Thumbs up on the piece today. Coffee? Mark's reply came 3 minutes later, the kind of punctuation the workday allowed. Coffee. 4? There was a comma in the message that made it feel less like a convention and more like an invitation. Kelly agreed.